Right folks, so we are indeed changing out the rod bearings on the E60 M5 today. And before we begin with all the technical stuff though, I just want to give a massive thanks to all of you who checked out the introduction video on this car. As I said, it was a bucket list item for me, and I'm sure it is for many of you folks as well. So it's going to be nice documenting something like this. Makes a change from all the sort of modern hatchbacks that I usually do, and there's nothing quite like a V10 and a 5 Series. Now the plan is we're going to be headed down to our good friends at Evolve Automotive in Luton for the job. Takes about 3 days to do, and I do appreciate, I did say it's going to be a bunch of DIY on this project. That will continue. But you got to understand, doing rod bearings is not something you want to attempt in your backyard without a 2-post lift and weather being quite unpredictable. So yeah, I hope you guys can let me off on that one. So in typical fashion, I got the M5 recovered down. Evolve are based in Luton, which is about a 9 minutes drive. I did fancy spinning a bearing en route there. That'd be pretty ironic. As I mentioned, the job was spanned over 3 days, so we had to split it up in the most efficient way for filming. And what you're seeing on the screen now is pretty much day one, which is getting the car stripped down and basically the sump off, ready for the bearings to be changed out on day 2. So yeah, whilst you're watching all of this, I think I'll just give you a quick little idea of what the rod bearing issue is on these particular cars. Now, a rod bearing, if you're totally unfamiliar, is a bearing that sits in between the crankshaft and the connecting rod, separated by a thin film of oil. Now, for majority of cars, this is not a maintenance item. I mean, when was the last time you saw a GTI getting its bearings done? Doesn't happen, does it, folks? But yeah, for a bunch of these S-engine BMWs, like the S85 V10, the S65 V8, and also the S54 inline 6 and the E46 M3, it is an issue. Now, from what my understanding is, on these particular engines, the clearance between the bearings and the crankshaft journal is too small, causing them to spin over time if the car is abused and been neglected. This isn't helped by the fact that these cars run 10W60 oil from factory, which is very thick and takes a long time to warm up. Now, BMW did actually revise the OEM bearings in mid-2010 onwards. They changed from a lead carbon material over to a tin aluminium one. This was done mostly for environmental reasons, and from what I've read, doesn't actually make much difference to the wear. Now, there are a few aftermarket solutions like the ACL bearings and also the BE bearings. These have a bit extra clearance compared to the OEM part. You can also team them up with some ARP bolts, which have a less of a kind of tricky torquing procedure, but I'll get to all of that later in the video when I actually show the job being done. Both options seem to have pretty good feedback on the forum, so I reckon you'll be fine with either. Ironically, the ACL bearings are cheaper than OEM ones, so yeah, that's another thing to consider if you want to save a bit of extra money. Now, if bearing failure wasn't enough, there is also the high pressure Vanos line that you want to get changed out whilst you're getting your bearings done. US 65 boys haven't got anything to worry about. It basically applies just to the S85 V10. I've read that it was revised on later cars, but some people are saying it's LCR onwards, and some people are saying it's like a certain build date that pre-LCRs may come under. Either way, I've got it done in this video so you can see exactly what it is. Essentially what it is, it takes oil from the Vanos pump in the oil pan area through the middle of the engine up to the top where the Vanos units are, and it can leak over time, causing loss of oil pressure in the Vanos system. So not ideal, and for the price of it, just get it done whilst you're there. But yeah, I think that's enough voiceover anyway. That was my brief explanation of the topic. I'm sure there's much more technical videos out there on rod bearing failure that you can have a look at. Next clips you're going to see are from day 2, where we actually start getting these things out. Right, so we're down at Evolve as usual. There's pretty much every type of M car here. We're here with Aston today. So what's the plan then? So as you said, we took most of the car apart already. Yep. We've got the sump off so we can access the shells fairly soon. We've got the ACL bearings, the ARP bolts. We're going to do the high pressure Vanos line as well, which is internal to the engine. Yep. Those are the new washers for the line. That's the standard oil pickup pipe, which we'll obviously refit when we put the car back together. Yep. You need to remove that to access all of the shells, which is the reason why we've taken that off. And it looks like you've got pretty much a whole tool set laid out there, Aston. Yeah, so basically this is every tool you need to do the job. Yeah. There is a few tools in here mixed up because we do so many of the E92 M3 or the S65 rod bearings. I already leave the tools laid out on the bench. Yep. So some of these tools are used for that, but they're also used on this job, and then there's some additional tools you need to access certain areas on this job that you don't have on the S65. Now, this is pretty much all accessible to do the rod bearings at this point, isn't it? Yeah, pretty much. So the front ones are obviously quite restricted by the oil pump. Yep. So we'll take that out. The Vanos pump there, we've got to take out anyway to get to that Vanos line. So this is where it connects onto the Vanos pump. Yeah, and then it runs up through the engine and then comes out kind of midway by the pulleys. So the next thing is to obviously rotate the engine to be able to access each shell. Because obviously the crankshaft sits in different positions, you have to rotate the engine to get the shells to the bottom so you've got access for them. Now, just the general condition of the rest of the car. Now, the good thing, they use a lot of aluminium on these, so it does prevent it from rusting. I mean, the subframe's aluminium, the arm's aluminium. Overall, pretty pleased with it. I'd say on the front, the only thing that's got slightly crusty is this anti-roll bar. Yeah, so if you look here, there's a bit there. Could change that out. The engine mounts, I'm going to retain these existing ones for now because I just want to see what the car drives like as it is, because I haven't actually driven this car yet. Moving down here, exhausts are all stuck, aren't they, Aston?
Yeah, it's looking pretty stock. I can't see any welds or modifications anywhere. You've obviously still got your secondary cats, the resonator, and then your back boxes as well, and it all looks pretty standard. It's rare usually to see one that hasn't been played with.
Yeah.
Especially the exhaust wise, because you've got that V10 engine.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to open up sound of that engine. It does sound great with exhaust modifications, but I'm sure you'll change that at some point. Rear anti-roll bar is similar to the front. You've got a bit of rust and stuff coming off of there.
Yeah, I think the drop links probably refresh the diff casing.
Yeah.
And yeah, then apart from that, it should be all good. And that's one freed Vanos pump. Right, so that's both pumps taken off. We're just draining the oil filter now. There's a located over here, which is really strange. Never thought it'd be there out of all places. I'm gonna have a look at the filter, see if there's any little metal particles in there. We did drain the oil yesterday. These actually have two drain plugs, as I mentioned. There's one at the front and one at the back. That was on the LCI model onwards. What was happening was that there was oil still being retained in this part of the sub. As you can see, it's kind of like, it almost has a little bridge there and it goes over to that side. So when you were draining the oil on a pre-LCI, there was still all of this left over here. So what BMW decided to do was just add another drain plug right there. Pretty simple stuff, but it does the job.
Blinker fluid.
Yeah, blinker fluid, yeah.
Blinker fluid.
There we go. I mean, I think the last time this car had an oil change was like low 60k mileage, which is like
about 10k ago-ish.
I mean, yeah, the maths adds up, I guess. I think that's the
70k minus 10k, about 60k.
Now, you're saying the best way to identify if there's any kind of metal shavings or stuff is just look at the filter rather than the pan itself?
We'll take this filter apart. I mean, we cleaned this tray out before we dropped the oil out of the filter anyway. It doesn't look too shiny. Yeah, so we've pulled it apart. Yeah, just kind of inspect between the fins, just to see if there's any like large pieces of metal or any like foreign objects in there. We don't really need to do this because we're doing the rod bearing change anyway, so we're going to be able to see what the shells are like once we take them out.
Yeah.
But it's generally good practice when you're doing an oil change.
Yeah.
To just inspect the filter.
So it's the exciting bit now. We're going to get some bearings out.
Cool. So we'll see. As I said earlier, we're going to start here just because these ones are already like pointing downwards at BDC.
So is it a relatively straightforward process, just undoing a couple of bolts?
Yeah, pretty simple. Just you say that. How much has it taken us to get to here? I think we deserve to have a nice simple part now. Yeah, you just undo these two caps, like the bolts that bolt the cap to the rod.
Yeah.
And then because of they're obviously like quite stuck together, so we just crack the bolts and then just give it a tap just to shunt them out.
Yeah, because it splits in half, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I mean you probably know this anyway, but anyone that doesn't know, these are actually made together, the cap and the rod.
Yep.
And then they're broken with impact, which cracks the two pieces apart.
Yep.
So they only mate up with the cap for each rod will only mate up with the corresponding rod.
Yeah, you can't mix it up essentially.
Can't mix them up. They've also got numbers on them as well, so you can easily work out which one goes to which. The suspense is killing you, right?
Yeah, the suspense is mad.
I'm gonna go get lunch. Obviously, the bottom ones are not normally as bad as the top ones.
Yeah.
You've got the compression of the engine pushing down on the pistons. There's a bit more contact between the top bearing and the crankshaft than there is the bottom one, so you do tend to have more wear on the top than the bottom.
So let's have a look. I want to just look at your facial reaction just to see if. So.
It's not too bad.
Not too bad, yeah. Yeah, I mean to be fair, that looks pretty mint, isn't it?
It's not too bad. Let's have a look, see what the top one's like. So this is the top one for cylinder 6.
Okay.
So you got. Ooh. You see you got a bit of copper coming through there.
It helps if my camera focuses. There we go, camera finally focused.
You see the thickness of the bearing. Without measuring, you're not going to know exactly how thick it is, but I don't know, like a general inspection, you can tell it hasn't been worn down too far that it's ended up spinning. Obviously, you would know if it's spun anyway. Got
the trusty A4 piece of paper out as well, with the extra couple there on the end. Usually it's the 8-cylinder one, which you see everywhere.
Professionally laminated, that is, mate.
Yeah.
Not just an A4 piece of paper.
So that's the OEM torque specs for the OEM bolts, right?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
See, I mean, for the ARP bolts, we haven't got to worry about this exact sort of rating there because they have a sort of fixed setting, isn't it? Around 50 pound-feet?
Yeah, so it's 50 foot-pound
okay.
On the ARP bolts. that is for the standard OE bolt. So it's,
Yeah.
each bolt is 6 newton meters, then 20 newton meters, then 130 degrees, and then you crack it off and redo it. So each one is tightened up 3 times.
Wow. Right, top one for cylinder 1. Again, what we thinking? The bottom one's already out there and on the table. It didn't look too bad, but as I said, top's normally
Similar wear to cylinder 6, but
yeah.
maybe a little bit more worn, but yeah, still copper coming through.
This is the kind of part number for the ACL bearings I've gone for. There's 2 types. I've just gone for the standard ones, which already have more clearance than the OEM ones. There is a set that it has even more clearance, but I'm not bothered with that because it's not needed.
So on the OE bearings,
Yeah.
you've got top and bottom are different.
Right.
So when you buy them new, they're labelled, well, I say they're labelled, they're coloured. They've got like a little blue mark on the top ones and a little red mark for the bottom ones. And obviously they've got a different part number. On the ACL bearings, they're the same, but because they come in like 2 packs and they're packed together,
Yeah.
it's good practice to use 1 pack for the top and 1 pack for the bottom. But it
Okay.
doesn't matter which way around you do it.
So yeah, the plan is we're going to get this first set in. Once that's done, we'll continue getting the rest of them out. Obviously, it's all done one by one as you go along. Probably stick the camera on the tripod, just showing it all been done. And then once we're complete, I'll show you all the old bearings there on the table. Right, so that's all the bearings changed out to the ACL ones. We've got the old ones over here.
There is copper showing through on all of the top ones, but
Right.
none on the bottom. The bottom ones have got some odd little random wear marks showing on some of them, but again, not too bad. This is kind of what we'd expect to see on like a 60 to 70k car. I've seen way worse at lower mileage, and I've seen slightly better at higher mileage, but this is on average what you would expect.
Yeah, so this is, it's not excessive in any way, isn't it? It's
No,
kind of
it's not excessive, and there's no damage on the crank or anything like that, so you haven't got anything to worry about. Obviously now you've changed them, you've got peace of mind that they're good.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth doing them. If you didn't do them now, you would have been good for a while of looking after it, but you don't know that until you strip it out and have a look.
Yeah, because the issue is it's all a bit unknown, isn't it? Like seeing photos on the internet of like cars, as you said, with lower mileage than this one, and there's like so much copper showing on them.
Yeah.
So it's just literally a sort of a roll of the dice. So if it's on your mind, get them changed out. I think that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a set on show in the reception area on 62k.
Yeah.
And every single one of them is copper, top and bottom.
Yeah. I think whoever owned this car in the past, the last couple of ownerships, they just cruised around in it because it sort of adds up. The rest of the car doesn't look abused, so it makes sense that the bearings ain't abused.
The engine to be looked after to match the rest of the car.
A bit of a win-win so far. Now the next step is pretty much the final step in changing the Vanos line, which Jay has already made a start on.
The top of it is just in.
Is that it there with the hex head?
Yeah, so this line here runs up to the Vanos. As you can see, it follows up and joins onto here.
Right.
So that line runs either side to the Vanos.
Yeah.
And then it runs down there and has a split in the middle, or has a join in the middle.
Yep.
And that join there, that bolt, goes through this line and bolts into the main Vanos line, or the high pressure Vanos line that we're changing inside.
Right.
So yeah, it's not easy to see, and it is quite awkward to get to, and it's difficult to get out, but that is essentially the process of it.
And there we have it. One looks like perfectly intact Vanos line. I suppose it is the case with these later cars, the line has been revised, hasn't it?
Yeah, so it should have the better one in it anyway.
Yeah, just a bit of a peace of mind.
We're just doing it as a complete peace of mind, and just because it gives you more of an in-depth look into what's involved in the job if you do need to change this.
Yeah, because I suppose if someone is doing this job on an earlier car, they'd want to do this anyway.
They'd want to do it, yeah, definitely.
Right, Aston, so for the most part we've got everything done, haven't we?
Yeah, so the shells are changed, obviously with the bolts as well. We finished changing the Vanos line, Jay's just putting the pulley back on and the belt and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then yeah, next thing's put the sump on.
Yeah.
Well, the oil pickup line first, then the sump with the new gasket. Bolt all that up and then just bolt everything back up. Getting late now anyway, so we'll get that finished up tomorrow, and then by the end of the day tomorrow you'll have the car back running and you can actually drive it.
So yeah, I'll catch you folks in the next clip, which will be tomorrow now. Right, so it's day 3, we're just getting the car all back together now. The sump is back on. Subframe's going to go up in a second.
Living the dream.
Living the dream. At least got the heaters on today, I guess.
Yeah, a bit of warmth in.
Bit of warmth.
But it's not actually cold today.
Yeah, to be fair, it's not snowing for a change. For some reason, it was snowing yesterday at one point. So when doing the Vanos line, obviously these pulleys, a few of them had to come off, and obviously the tensioner had to be slackened off, resulting in the tensioner actually losing tension. So what I ended up having to do was going and getting a new one from the dealership. So I'm now 95 quid lighter, but that's the part number there. So yeah, that's going to go in so we can actually get some tension in the belt. And there was some other thing that you wanted to mention as well, Aston. We're getting the Vanos pump back in.
Yeah, so obviously when you put the Vanos pump back into the engine,
yeah,
you need to measure the backlash on the cog on the Vanos pump. Where you've got the cog sits like that,
yeah,
you run the DTI gauge on it like a rod, and you just notch the cog backwards and forwards,
yep,
and it measures on the DTI gauge the backlash. It's a very, very tight tolerance, so it has to be between 0.06 and 0.08. So we did that and we got it bang on 0.07.
Perfect. Right, so car's all back together now. Everything's all in place. We just put some 10W60 in it.
Yeah, so we'll crank it over with the crankshaft sensor unplugged.
Okay, just to build
up a bit of oil pressure and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we'll start it up after that, because obviously everything's been off, so it's all run dry.
Sound is insane, isn't it, when it's cranking in? I'm used to forcing the GTIs, Aston.
We've got bloody 2 1/4 of that now.
So that's all plugged back up now, so we're going to crank it up properly.
Yeah.
Everything's all back in place, all as stock as usual. So moment of truth, which side should I stand? Should I stand there or should I stand at the back?
Wherever you want us to.
It's kind of a tricky one with the V10 in it. It's just magnificent from both ends.
Stand at the back, you've got standard intake.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Exhaust sounds better than the engine.
Okay, yeah. Sounds like a diesel, as Clarkson used to say, innit? It runs, yeah.
A little bit rough, I think it's been sat a few days.
To be fair, I don't know what the quality of fuel is in there because I haven't driven it, so be good with...
The fuel's low, you don't know what fuel's in it, you don't know how long the fuel's sat for. So.
Yeah, here's underneath an S85 whilst it's on. Sounds just like a diesel, mate. There's not many times you can have a V10 just idling above your head here. I'm just standing right in between the exhausts. Yeah, it doesn't sound like anything else. It's just crazy this thing has 10 cylinders. Just a normal looking 5 series painted in blue. So after a few days, the E60 is leaving the ramp at Evolve, or spinning its way out in typical E60 fashion. Oh, is that too much power?
Go sideways, man.
That's all the E60s are good for, going sideways. But yeah folks, and this is a good place to end today's video. That's the rod bearings done on the E60. You can finally enjoy it. I'll let you know how the drive back goes, and if it goes all well, I'm sure it'll be good. If you want something similar on the S85 or an S65, just make sure you head down to Evolve and speak to main man here, look after you. Oh yeah, I just realised he's driving it before me. But yeah, subscribe for all of that good stuff, drop a like if you enjoyed it, and look out for the next video, which will be my first drive. And yeah.